This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode contains slight spoilers from The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen with mentions of the Clash of the Titans, ACOTAR, and Neon Gods. For full list, please see show notes.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the fantasy, literature, and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are welcoming a very special guest and our new friend, Abigail Owen,
who is an award-winning author, and we will be discussing one of her newest releases, The Games Gods Play. Welcome, Abigail.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Abigail Owen. As you guys mentioned, the author for The Games Gods Play. Super happy to be on here to chat with you guys about the book and all things fantasy and romantasy and world building and all the good stuff. And of course, Hades. Yeah, that's
that's great because right off the bat, I wanted to say I've never met a Hades that I didn't love, and yours is no exception. Right with when you knew you were starting off the Crucible series, did you always know that you wanted to start off with Hades? Did you have that childhood hyper-fixation with Greek mythology? There's going to be a bunch of questions. So it's did you always know that, was Greek mythology your hyper-fixation? Where did it all stem from?
So with the Greek mythology, it started, honestly, with Clash of the Titans, the original movie, from the 80s. I'm a child of the 80s. So that's what got me started. And then I was just talking to my mom the other day because she was like, we didn't learn Greek mythology in school. And I was like, well, I did. I remember having units at least on Greek mythology. But for some reason, those stories just stick in my head so much. I don't know where I picked them up. It's one of those odd, this must just be my brain gravitates towards that particular mythology. And believe it or not, I initially wasn't going to write initially I was going to write the book in a completely high fantasy world of my own making with the gods all based on the Greek gods. I'd already started putting together my gods' names and it was all based on the Greek gods. And as I did that, I was like, no, this needs to be the Greek gods. It's just too much in my head to not do that. And so that's where it started. And when it was originally going to be a high fantasy, I didn't have the god of death as the hero. He just picked her to pull her into to the story. But of course, the second I was Greek gods, I was like, oh God, Hades has to be a hero. Why did I not see that before? So yeah, it was, yeah.
That's amazing. The way that you're talking, it really sounds like you have let these characters kind of take the story from you and kind of guide the way. Is that sort of how you approach your writing, kind of just letting it happen, or are you very rigid in your structure?
So I am in a weird hybrid of both. I call myself a plantser, which is a plotter and a pantser. So I do plot out. I have usually what I do is there's kind of they're the 7 major pillars of writing where it's you're writing to the inciting incident, you're writing to the halfway point, so on and so forth. I usually have those planned out. Just because I want to know what next major turning point in the book I'm writing towards, that helps me kind of frame things. And then I have a massive spreadsheet that basically has pulled from every writing planner thing out there that I could find and popped it all into one place. But I don't fill it all out. I tend to use that more as a brain teaser where I'm like, okay, I'm stuck on this scene or I'm not sure where to go or, why is the pacing doing something funky? And then I'll check my spreadsheet. Oh, okay. It's because I needed to be here by now, or I missed a moment to do this breather scene, or it just kind of is a brain teaser more than anything. And so I have that side with the plotting, but then I started out very much as a pantser. My very first book I ever wrote, I wrote the scenes out of order, just in the order that I saw the scenes, and then figured out how to connect them and put a plot in there later. It was not the way to write a book, but it's the way my brain decided I needed to finish my first book. And so the characters absolutely speak to me. we'll have whole arguments where I'm like, this is not where we're going. And they're like, yes, you are. And now, re-swizzle your plot, woman. And so, yeah, that tends to be how I run.
It seems so fun though, like to not know. You're kind of like, you're along for the adventure too. Cause you're like, what are we getting into today?
Exactly. Oh, I have so much fun with it. And this one actually had a little more framework to it because I had to come up with each of the labors and make sure that there was spacing between those for other moments, but not have them it was like not be so packed that you're just doing labor. And so it was like that had to naturally give me some specific spacing.
So that's what I was going to say. It was like, so were the labors your plots, and then it was the pantsing in between that got you to
the rest of it. Yeah.
Seems very hybrid.
And you'll see, like, I have copy after copy after copy of that spreadsheet for the brainstorming where it's like, oh no, I changed direction, fill it out again. Oh no, I changed direction, fill it out again. And so there's like no one version of it that's like, here's what the book ended up like. So yeah, I'm at such an odd duck between the pantsing and the plotting, because like all of my friends who are pantsers are like, oh, she's such a plotter. And all my plotter friends are like, oh, she's such a pantser. Like, yeah.
Well, then you become that resource for everybody to go to. You're like, how would you do this? And how would you go to that? The way you bounce ideas off of each other.
Oh, and I love doing that with other authors. It's one of my favorite things to do is like brainstorm. Yeah. So fun.
And as we're talking about like kind of brainstorming, I really love this world that you have kind of put together. We have a hybrid world here, don't we? We have like I would say modern day San Francisco, modern day California, and then we have Olympus. We have our very traditional kind of way to think about it. What was that like? Kind of knowing but actually kind of knowing what both of these should look like, right? Like both of these worlds, we know what those should look like, and then blending them together and then building beyond that. It's so much fun. Like, did you have fun with this? It seems like it would be fun.
Oh, yeah. So the world building, I think after the characters and the romance, the world building is my very favorite thing to do. Just being able to picture those worlds. And I think it's been true. That's been true for me for why I was drawn to anything fantasy in the first place. Like as a kid, I pictured myself as Princess Leia on the swing set and I would come up with whole different storylines of extra characters or whatever from my favorite stories, and just to continue them in my head. So the world building is definitely one of my very favorite parts. I loved being able to blend both the modern and the ancient in this very specifically. The modern was fun because it was fun. Like, for instance, you mentioned it was set in San Francisco. So that's where the main character Lyra's from. And I lived in Northern California, Sacramento area for 10 years. And so we were in San Francisco all the time. It's one of my favorite cities. And I could just picture so clearly like the actual city the way it is today, but with Zeus's temple on the other side of the bay, on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge, where what's called the Marin Headlands, but in my book is called the Minos Headlands. It's just like this giant hill, basically, or mountain, really, on the other side. I could just picture it there so clearly. So that was really fun. And then in my story, part of the reason the gods are picking a different ruler of the gods every 100 years is because they all got sick of Zeus and basically kicked him out. But it started a war, and they leveled Olympus as part of that war. It's what stopped the war eventually. So to me, the gods would have built Olympus back up the way that it had been because they would have missed it so much. But at the same time, they've added their own homes that have all the modern conveniences. And, we've got running water and showers and, hot water. Yeah. So partly that's because I live in Texas. And if there's not air conditioning, I don't survive. So.
And this summer has been really brutal. I feel like anywhere, I'm like, why? And I feel like it's everywhere that feels that. So I can only imagine what Texas feels like right now. I love that this is from what I can remember, this is the first time that I feel like Zeus is being questioned, and not in it was more in a way of, okay, you're ruling for this 100 years. Let's switch it up. And I love that. I feel like I've never seen that. So original. And everybody had, it wasn't like, it wasn't set up where Zeus was going to question it. He knew the time was coming. Everybody's picking their champions, and everybody was ready for change. And in a way, granted, it's 100 years, it's an interesting democratic sense of, you know, like I know you're not voting, but there's this agreement or like, okay, we're over Zeus. It might be somebody else's turn. And even like mortals are excited. Like they all want to be a part of this. And I think that's always probably the fascination with Greek mythology is it's not just gods. It's the inclusion of everybody involved. It's a spectacle.
It is. That's the best part. I loved coming up with that in particular, just because, and the way I set it up so that it felt like Zeus was just like, okay, this is how it is now, is that it's been 2,000 years of this. Like they've gone through 20 rounds. There might be hints that the person who actually leveled Olympus is Hades. Where basically he was like, I'm not getting involved. And then it was like, you children smash. Like, okay, get your shit together. So we may or may not find out more about that in the second book. But because of that, it allowed him to just kind of take not a backseat, but like it's almost like we trade over presidents now. You know what I mean? Like we may not love who we get, but we're going to keep that cycle going. And what I also loved about that is that it gave other gods, particularly the goddesses, a chance to rule. So that's something else I'd like to explore more as the series goes on, is what their rules looked like, and give them quite a bit more fun to play with.
Oh, I love
than
that.
your traditional.
And there's so many, like there's so many.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this is only book one. You know, like it's written in such a way that you can you can expand, because why would you just want to stay here and obviously how
in that
it
little
ends,
area?
how
Oh
it
yeah.
rests. Yeah.
Well, and that tends to be how I do with my series. It's why I do series, is because once I set the world, I'm like, now let's play. Like, what can I do with this that just really has a lot of fun? And I do that until I do it basically until I've bled that world dry.
Well, it's always like book one that people are, you know, especially when you think world building and fantasy in general, it's like that's the hardest book. But it's not hard to get into. And the structure that you have in this book, the chapters are shorter, especially for a fantasy book, which is so nice because you're in that, as a reader, you're in that in between of like, oh, I'll just read one more chapter and then I'll go to bed. But you're like, but it's only one more chapter. So I'll just do like another quick chapter and then another quick chapter. Like the pacing is so great. She's a thick book. And I know according to your website, you say like it takes like 2 to 6 weeks to write. Did it take you 6 weeks to write that? Like how long did it take you to write this?
Yeah, this one was actually read about 6 weeks, but only because, and actually it was another 20,000 words. Like we cut a chunk out of that thing. But the only reason I wrote it that fast was because I signed the contract and my editor said I signed the contract end of April and she said I need it end of June. And so
no pressure. Woo.
Yeah, no pressure at all. And so my pace usually is to write around 2,000 words a day, so about 10,000 words a week. So if you do a 100,000 word novel, it takes me about roughly 10 weeks. Add on another 2 to 3 weeks for like interruptions in life and blah, blah, blah. But that's about how long it takes me. This one I was writing between 4,000 and 7,000 words a day. Like I literally told my family I shall be unavailable until this is over. But it also helped that with this one, I could see the world so clearly. And with the labors setting up kind of that regular cadence of like, I knew exactly what I was writing to next, that helped with the plotting. For whatever reason, well, actually I kind of know why. So Lyra really speaks a lot to my head, even more than, previous characters who have a similar snarky feel. Like most of my heroines have a similar snarky feel, I would say. But this one, I think because she came in with the curse on her shoulders, we had just come out of a really rough patch with my daughter who's autistic and she struggles with depression and anxiety. And I think watching her handle that with humor actually added to Lyra quite a bit. And so all those things added up to this book flew out of me. Like I call it my magic book. Like it was just so, I couldn't stop writing it. I would go to bed dreaming about it and wake up and be like, oh, I need to add this and this scene and tweak this and more than anything, any book I've written before. So, which is making book 2, like it's still flying out of me, but I'm having to be much more deliberate with it because now the world is set and, I have my own personal expectations around it, but it means that I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel as fast to write because I'm also not on such a tight deadline. So, all of that added up to, it came out fast.
Yeah.
I'm
in shock. Yeah. I'm in awe. Wow. Wow, how incredible. I think it's well known. I don't have any talent, but what a talent. My gosh, that is just incredible. Wow.
It was all the stars aligned, honestly. I had been working on the idea before I pitched it to my editor, but happened to be at an event where I got a chance to pitch it to her. And I pitched her things before that. She was always like, okay, I like this, but where are you going to go with it? Or or even not that. And this is the first time ever that she immediately was like, I want it. I want to sign it right now. And so that also, I think, gave me like an added confidence boost and just, kicked in some momentum. But it was so clear. And it doesn't happen like that. There's some books that go on the page faster for whatever reason. The characters talk to you more. You can just really see this. I can name, the books out of my 50 books that I've written. And then there's some that it's just like pulling teeth. Like this is just not coming out. And I always love it at the end but those always take a lot more work to get there.
Well, you mentioned stars, and stars are quite a theme that we have in this book. It is a pet name. It is a tattoo. It is a clothing decoration. These clothes are gorgeous. These pantsuits. My gosh.
See them.
Yes.
Imagine them all the fan art. Yeah. All the fan art. You can have fashion, even the fashion writers.
It's so great. So, just talking about the plot a bit here. So we have our labors. We have our every 100 years. Why is it different this time? Why do we have this book? Because Hades decided to, put his hat into all of this and say, hello, I'm going to compete this year. We love this. We love Hades. We love his white little curly Q love this little detail.
Thank you.
Very, very sexy. We love the suspenders with the rings, with the axes.
There's nothing sexier than suspenders.
We love.
I was at a signing where a man walked by dressed in exactly what I dressed Hades in. I literally left my booth and ran across the room and was like, may I take a picture of you, sir?
I was going to be like, did he read the book? But no, because it's not out yet.
And he was like, okay, sure. Back off a little bit. But the leather, a crossed in the back with the whole thing. I was like, wow, there goes Hades.
Yeah, as an author, that has to. You're like, did you cosplay? And I didn't know you got an arc yet.
The white curly Q actually comes from the actor Richard Madden.
Really?
Go look at pictures of him. His hair's got a curl to it, and it kind of he wears it kind of off his head, and there's a streak right here off to the side that's white. And I was like, I don't know why, but I just think
that called to you. I mean, he was in Eternals, so you have that. You're like, there's a correlation.
But I also liked giving it a reason for Hades to, for that to be there, which was also fun.
And what a reason. So we have our labors and we have Hades in them. We have our main character. She's a thief. I love this. She's also cursed. She's unlovable, but we have our crush on Boone. All of this fantastic. Thieving. Are we into thieves? Are we able to thieve things?
Oh, I can't thieve things. I think I would be a terrible thief, but I am fascinated by the thought of a world where you would have a guild of thieves who work together, who are trained specifically to do that, and the fact that because of her curse, she's essentially a failed thief, which just makes it even more lonely for her, but also fun. I feel like I like to see heroines who are very strong, but don't necessarily start from a place of strength. And so, although I also love to read heroines that are badass off the first page. So give me a good
She's
mix.
Worked for her strength.
She's really
and
worked
humor.
For her
Yeah.
strength. Yeah. I think the fact that she does have that thieving background gives her a different perspective on certain situations, because she's going to look at things very differently from who you trust or what information you need to have in this moment, or, how are we going to approach getting off this pole?
Well, let me tell you something. She is better than I could ever be, because as soon as she was like, allies, I'm going to start telling the answers to everything, I was like, whoa.
She changed the game, and everyone's like, no, it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, in the next 100 years, that's actually going to be written into the rules.
Like, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that actually can, because if you look at each of the part breaks, I have a quote. There's, headers for the chapters too, but at each of the part breaks, I have a quote, and I had come up with that, the survivors changed the game. And I was like, okay, how would she change the game? And I think it's kind of fascinating to think about how different people from different perspectives and histories and goals would approach being a human in the games, because they're not automatically deadly. They can be deadly, but they're not automatically deadly. So do you get people who are just total sociopaths that are like, I'm going to win this and I'm going to kill everybody, so I am the last man standing? I think you would, because that's something that seems very sadly human. But you would also get people that maybe are too scared to play in any of the games. And so they're not about winning. They're just about like not dying. Right. Except that they get a pretty good prize at the end. So then that might change their goals. And so, that's fun. And then to also look at like, what kind of human would the gods pick? Because I feel like Zeus would pick somebody just as conniving as he is, but he doesn't. He picks somebody very strong, but I think who also has very, moral center. For Samuel, and or like, Athena is going to pick somebody who's both super smart but also super deadly, like, so it depends on what god you're looking at and kind of what they feel like is going to compete best. So it was just really, I had a lot of fun with all those secondary characters and the gods, and coming up with like the combinations and who's going to do what and pick what, and yeah, it was so fun.
Well, you see that when they're talking about the virtues, right? Like, what is going to be the most important virtue to the gods? And that's something that even as a champion, you're trying to decipher, you're trying to assume, and you can't assume, because everything leading up until this point, even Hades, they're like, you're not what I thought. And he's like, and he's like, even from the beginning, she's like, thanks. And he's like, you're not supposed to be thanking me. You're supposed to be fearing me. Grr. I don't know. If Hades ever approached you, would any of us be scared of him? I'd be like, yes, this is the best day ever.
I've been chosen.
I'd be thrilled.
That'd be so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. He's fun. He's going to get, I'm making him darker in book 2.
Ooh, love that. Even more. That's lovely. That's lovely. Talking about a little bit of originality here, let me tell you, this is a spoiler plot point here. The Persephone angle that you've got here, amazing, magnificent. Not what I was expecting at all. Threw me across the room, like every little hint. It was like, well, it wasn't like that. It's not like that. It's not like that. I was like, what is it like then? I was so interested. Was that something that you were just like, yes, that is like a twist in here? Because woo, you got me.
Well, off the bat with Persephone, I knew I didn't want them to be the love interests. It's not that I don't love a great Hades Persephone retelling story. I love it. It's one of my favorite of the myths. But I think because we've seen that several times recently, more subtly like with ACOTAR, less subtly with Neon Gods, for instance. So I wanted to go kind of a different way with that. Plus, I don't love that in the real myths, he's her uncle. So, it was like, yeah, let's go with a different heroine. And for me, that also really much opened up a really imaginative space to be in with their relationship, his relationship with Lyra, and how that's progressing and what that's going to look like. And at the same time, I had to figure out, okay, what's Persephone doing then this entire time? And so I was like, okay, so I actually want her off the page for book 1. And then we find out why.
And we also find out and have a fantastic relationship with a 3-headed dog who I think we all love so much. I love the inner voices that you gave these heads, Sarah Bear ass. So amazing. So lovely. I'm a dog person. So this was just joyful every time, he was on page. And he is not only a friend, like I would say a theme that is running through kind of the course of this book, correct me if I'm wrong, is like loneliness and like friendship and acceptance and like letting your guard down and like really understanding and being seen, but also like your own strength. These are just my thoughts. So
no, those are absolutely
all right,
exactly.
awesome. All right, awesome.
Yeah,
so to have our dog say like, Hades needs a friend. Like, I want to be your friend. I really like you. Like, you're going to be part of our found family. I thought that, and Hades says, a few times, like, oh, are you adding to your collection? Like, you're adding to your collection, like all of these, I mean, they're men, but like all of these like people that are becoming very precious to our main character. And it's really lovely. Mm-hmm. This theme of friendship, is great. And so this is my question. There are a lot of secondary characters and a lot of personalities running around. I'm sure, again, I have no talent, but as an author, was it easy to keep track of everybody doing everything, especially in these labors? Like, a lot of people are doing a lot of things. It's a lot of moving parts. I could not do something like that. Was that a challenge?
Oh, yeah. I always tend to end up with very large secondary casts in every series I write. I don't know why. And then you're going to laugh. Through the course of the series, I kill more and more of them off because it's just too many people to handle. So that's, yeah. So when you see deaths, that's me going, yeah, I got enough people and you're out. Like, who's going to be the biggest impactful death here?
So people are on the chopping block. You're like, nobody is safe. Yeah.
I start going Game of Thrones.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Walking Dead, both of those. Yeah. Nobody's safe starting book 2. And not everybody was safe in book 1, but yeah, that's always complicated. And I don't know if it's just that I love to surround myself with lots of different characters. And so that's what happens in my writing too. Luckily I don't kill off my own friends. But I find it fun. I have spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets of like what people look like, what they sound like, what their key phrases are, what their backgrounds are, all of that, so that I don't forget those parts. And so then I tend to write a scene with like the most kind of critical parts in it. And then I go, okay, who's missing? Who did I forget? And then I try to pepper them in or be like, there's a reason why they're not in this scene.
If I forgot about them, they must not be important.
They're hurt.
So yeah. that's your pantser.
Seriously. Well, and there's a hilarious TikTok by a fellow author, where she's pretending to be 2 of the side characters. They're like, hey, they're leaving us. Like we had the key of remembrance or whatever it was. It's a very important thing that I brought to this scene. And now they're just leaving us. And they're like, the author walks by and is like, oh,
whoops. So you realize like 7 chapters, you're like, oh, we needed the key of remembrance.
Like, yeah. And then like checking, yeah, I didn't put them in there. And I've had so many moments like that where I'm like, I'm pretty sure this character hasn't popped up in about 100 pages. Let me go back and look.
Like I could see it, like even from like a visual, like from like a gamer standpoint, you could like imagine the adventure, like hopping back through the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Where the side characters are like, we were there. What happened? Maybe I need to write a whole series about side characters who get forgotten.
That would be like, yeah. I mean, you keep yourself busy. I don't know where you find time for yourself or.
Yeah.
Like, I don't either. That'd be great.
Lately, yeah. I'm if you do the Strengths Finders, do you know Strengths Finders at all? I'm a number 1 achiever.
Well.
And yeah, if you listen to Becca Slime, who does a lot with the Strength Finders for authors, she's like, yeah, number 1 achievers really do get more done than everybody else. And it's because I can't sit still. If I'm watching a movie, I also have to be folding laundry or, working on a whatever. Like, there's certain things I can't do at the same time, but I don't sit still.
Well, and I could just from the book, I could kind of pick that up just as you mentioned how short the chapters are. We're known for our fast paced action, right? Like we are really progressing and moving the story along, so much so that there is a time in the book where Lyra is kind of hurt for about 2 weeks, and we have about 3 labors go by, like boop, boop, boop. We are moving the plot along. And that was something that I did appreciate too. So as you said, like the labors were kind of like points that we need to hit. we hit them are just our main character just was not a part of them. And she was on her own kind of journey while her, I would say like team kind of members are going through these labors. And I found it was very interesting when Lyra does rejoin everybody for, I believe, the 10th labor, because she said there were 10, 11, 12. When she rejoins them, she says like, it's a little bit weird. Like my found family that I thought that I was really kind of establishing here has gone through life and death events without me. And now I'm not sure of where I fit kind of in this relationship again. So I found that very interesting because her relationship with Hades is like growing and kind of getting like steady, and then it kind of rocks and then it's steady again. But also this found family too is like we're building and then like, ooh.
Yeah.
It gets very tricky.
I actually based that piece of the book where she returns back to her found family and the other champions on a scene from the TV show Band of Brothers.
Really?
Actually, it's an entire episode that's dedicated to a soldier who was with them at the beginning through lots of the terrible, gets injured, and is off being hospitalized for a while, and then returns to them and is almost ostracized practically because he hasn't been now through these other horrible things with them, and they're just beaten all to hell, and he looks fresh as a rose at this point. And so that episode, I guess, really stuck in my head, or just stuck with me as like that would be really hard from both sides, because like you can see why both sides would feel the way they feel. Where he's like, I went through all these things, I'm not, slacking off, and I was injured. And they're like, yeah, but these other people who were injured came back sooner. And, so that was definitely in my head for that. I also chose to skip some of the labors because there were 12. And I think 12 labors on the page, as much fun as it would have been to come up, like show each of those, would have been too, like, you get to a point with the labors where you're like, oh my gosh, another labor. And so there was that part. And then I also very much wanted to explore the emotional side of things. And that gave me much more time to grow the Hades and Lyra relationship, as well as see the underworld.
Well, and growing the relationship between the two of them, I love this. We have some very spicy makeout scenes, and then we have some spice. I mean, this is very, very lovely. And also, too, again, setting aside Persephone really allows this relationship to grow. And it was very lovely knowing that this curse is hanging over her, and she feels herself to be unlovable. The curse makes her unlovable. And then Hades is like, my star, my star, my star. We love this, right? I mean, we want this kind of devotion at all times. But Hades is working behind the scenes here. Hades has other plots going on. And you say in book 2 that he's going to get a little bit darker. I love that. But
we're also going to find out what he was doing.
Yes. All right. You took my question from me and answered it. Lovely. So excellent. We're going to find out what he's doing. All of those times where he is gone, he's doing. And I like then that our main character is able to grow her relationship with her found family, even though she anticipates that Hades is going to be angry about it. But it does show his kind of development too, where he's just like, yeah, no, he's going to come live with us. That makes total sense. I get it. Like, he can't live there. Yeah. And it shows this kind of like, thawing of all of these like emotional walls. I love this. I love when a man can just kind of just, let go like that, especially when he is as gorgeous as Hades. What was the ride like for them? Not literally, going through their romance. Just like we know the way that the Persephone myth is, and then making this your own. What was that like?
Well, I think taking Persephone out of the mix did help a lot. Like I said, because of the imagination part of it, but also because with that story, Hades is obsessed with Persephone almost to like a stalkerish level, depending on how you handle it, right? So like, taking that aspect of his personality away and went, okay, who is this guy? And what I loved about both Hades and Lyra is I think they're both coming from a place of complete loneliness. Lyra, obviously, because she's cursed to be unlovable, and so she doesn't have friends. But at the same time, I think we also explore, like, did she perpetuate some of that? Did she say, oh, I've got this curse, so I won't be friends or I won't be friendly? Exactly. And kind of put up a wall between her and other people as a defense mechanism. But then it's like, how impactful is this curse? And let's figure that out a little bit. But so she's coming from a very lonely place in that way. But he is too, despite having Cerberus, despite having Charon, and even Aphrodite to a certain extent. They're clearly friends. He had Persephone. We imply that they were very close. He's still he holds himself very much apart. And I loved exploring the thought of somebody who is the god of death. Actually, especially in this mythology, the underworld, that's where everybody ends up. There's not like a heaven or a hell. You end up in certain parts of the underworld with various different rewards or punishments, depending on how you lived your life. But if all the souls are coming to him, then he's in charge of, that's an incredible burden when you think about that, being in charge of all the souls of all time. Like that's huge. And so I love that they connect over that, where they're both like, oh, this is what this feels like. And plus I just love having him be a grump and her, she's an odd combination of snarky and sunshine. Like she's like a little silver lining basically instead of a ray of sunshine. And so that was also super fun to just play with, because I had more fun coming up with the random thoughts in her head. And very much for this book, I had a theory of, if she can think it, she can say it out loud.
And I feel like she knew that. She's like, that actually, I said that out loud. That was supposed to be an inside thought.
Yeah.
So we have, towards the end of this book, we have the plot point of Pandora's box. Mm-hmm. Was Pandora's box, was that always going to be, like, that was always going to be it? What can you tell us about Pandora's box? Because I know I can only think it's going to be much more important in book 2.
It is, and important in a couple different ways that I don't want to get too spoilery with book 2. Obviously, with the cliffhanger that I leave you on, it's incredibly important, and it doesn't quite work out the way Hades was hoping. So clearly, Pandora's box becomes the biggest reason why he went through all of this. We'll find out a lot more about what drove that initially, and kind of more of the backstory side of things, so that we know how he got to where he needed to, put Lyra in the Crucible in the first place to get Pandora's box. But yeah, the way it works out, poor Hades, poor Hades. Yeah. And book 2, I'm having so much fun with it, because I knew exactly where I was going to go in book 2 my first draft of book 1, I was like, I'm not going to worry about book 2, book 3, book anything. I'm just going to have fun with this book. Which was very different from how I've approached series in the past, because I knew I wanted it to be a series. And usually I plot out all the main parts of each, like the very high level. This book is going to be this, and this book is going to be this, and this book is going to be, and I keep that in mind when I'm writing each book. And this time I was like, just going to have fun with it. And then I'll figure out book 2 later. So I was just wrapping up the first draft of book 1, and I went, oh, I know what I'm going to do for book 2. So when I was going back through and doing edits, and then when my editor and I went back through to do edits, I told her the whole plan for book 2, and she was like, on board, 100%, let's do it. And so we put we just layered a lot more into book 1 that I think will come to light in book 2 with that. And so I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Well, knowing how much fun you had writing with this, like, did you have a favorite part? And we could either spoiler, unspoiler, however you want to share it.
Oh gosh, I loved all the parts.
Well, you should. It's your book.
Yeah. What do I love the most of it? Because I had so much fun coming with, and each thing was so uniquely different to come up with. So like each labor was so fun to come up with, because it was like, let's think about that god and the value that they have, and their particular champion, because obviously they would try to build their labor around their champion winning and the gifts that they're giving them. And how do we, is that the champion that's going to win that one? I don't know. So that part was a lot of fun. But for me, it's probably the interaction with Hades and Lyra that I had the most fun with. So every time they're on the page together was just a little party in my head. It was just so much fun. I particularly love at the beginning their interactions because I think Hades is thrown for a loop with her, where he's like, okay, this wasn't expected. Like their first kiss, that was probably one of my favorite scenes to write, because it was like, I want this to be a kiss for a reason that she wouldn't be like, oh no, don't kiss me, but for a reason that's going to go a little awry, and then he's going to be surprised. Like so anything like that where I could surprise Hades, because he's a god. He's been around forever. He's a god of death. Like, hard to surprise Hades. So I had fun surprising Hades.
And he's surprised from the beginning, because that was the whole reason he chose Lyra. He was like, yeah, you're the first, and I feel like that's always like a hate, like, he's just like, you didn't balk at me. Like you're just like, and at that point, she also felt very much like, what do I, to go with like the isolation.
Anyways,
she's like, what's going to happen? Like, Chance is after me. Like,
what's the worst?
Like, I either go here, I go there. Like, it is what it is. Like, and I feel like we all get to that point. We're like, all right, send me on the moon, I guess. Like, what else can happen?
Well, and it reminds me a lot of just about every friend I have had who eventually found, the love of their life kind of thing. They found it when they hit that point in dating that they were like, screw it. I'm going to be happy as me. Maybe I'll just never find somebody. It'll be fine. Let's find happiness elsewhere. And so it almost has that vibe to it where it's like, she's just like, okay, whatever, like, come on. And that's of course when he walks into her life.
Kind of in the same vein as this, was there an aspect of the book that you found more challenging than anything else?
So I will say that, fitting in the found family as much as I wanted to get it in there was hard, just because there was so much page space already devoted to Lyra and Hades, so much page space already devoted to the labors and the gods. So for instance, the entire Dionysus labor was not supposed to be in the book. It was going to be off page originally.
Wow.
And I was like, but I still need a scene with because I felt like I had too many labors at that point, because even skipping 3, so you have 7, 6 felt more like a doable number. And I was like, I've got too many labors, but I really need a moment where the found family is starting to come together and they're getting to know each other. And how the hell do I do that in the middle of a labor? And so that probably was one of the more challenging bits. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's so much fun. And kind of last one, just tacking onto that. There are all of the Greek gods here. Do you, I guess, speaking to you personally, do you have a favorite? Like, do you have one that is just like one you champion?
I have so many favorites among the Greek gods for so many different reasons. I love Athena, actually, even though her character in this book is almost a little hard to love. But I think that would be true of somebody who's both incredibly smart and warlike. So like that would be a very hard combination to warm up to. And I think maybe that's why I love her as a goddess so much, is because that would be a hard combination. And on the flip side of that, one of my other favorites is Aphrodite. And I think that comes out a little bit with this book, just because I think the way I think of it is a lot of people dismiss Aphrodite, not within the book. I'm just saying in general as the Greek gods, because she's a goddess of love and lust and like, whatever, it's love and lust, right? And are missing the point of that might be the most powerful gift out there. Like, you can sway minds one way or the other, sway hearts one way or the other with love and lust. And so she's more powerful, I think, than even she gives herself credit for. Like, she's actually listened to the oh, it's you with your love. How cute. Like, you're going to have cutesy little hearts and blah, blah, blah. Right. And so she's one of my favorites for that reason. She almost feels like an underdog to me. Who else? Oh, I've always been a huge Hephaestus fan, or Hephaestus. I'm terrible at pronouncing because I'm so used to reading the names and not pronouncing the names that I'm always like, okay, oh yeah, that's this way. And I think that's because it's another underdog vibe, but like he's this strong, silent type in my head. And so I totally made him that, but like a lumberjack. So yeah, God, I love them all though. They're so good. They're so cool. Even Zeus, at some point, you're going to get some reasons for why Zeus is the way he is.
I feel like whenever we find out about like the why we are the way we are, you're just like,
oh, it's okay.
Oh,
that's all right.
There's a little bit more allowances there, even if it's Zeus, like historically the Zeus that we know through Greek mythology. Like, you're Zeus.
Well, I've always loved that about characters, particularly about characters that are villainous in some way. And I think I started that with Darth Vader, believe it or not, because for the first, I guess, what would it be? The first, 2.75 of the movies, you think he's this terrible, terrible thing that's just pure evil. And then he's his father, like, what? And then he saves him. What? Like, he's redeemable. And then, eventually we get the earlier movies and we get his backstory too. But to me, that was like that made him so much more interesting because he's not just evil for the sake of evil. And so I like, even if I don't get a chance in, book one to explore why certain characters are the way that they are, I like to get there eventually just because to me, everybody has a backstory. Everybody has a perspective that they're coming into things with. And almost always, if I've ever gotten into, say, an argument with somebody, there's a reason why that they're coming at me with what they're coming at. Like, if I can understand that, it just seems like we get places faster. Plus, it just makes things more interesting.
It does make things more interesting.
You travel a lot. You shared with us. Was there anywhere that you have traveled that you drew direct inspiration from to make sure that it was included in the series?
So obviously San Francisco is one of them. And that's more because I lived in the area than I traveled there. Although we did it's like a 2-hour drive. So we still had to travel to get there. Let me think.
Or maybe that's like, you know what? you don't even have to share because it might be in a future book.
Well, there's a few things like that. And I actually, I would love to travel even more. When we went to Europe this summer, we spent 17 years saving up to do that as a family. As soon as our first was born, we were like, we want to do a European vacation when they're old enough to really appreciate it and suck it in. And so I would love to do more than that. I have to make more money to travel that much. I would say that there are places now that I want to go visit because I had to research them. So for instance, I want to go see that island in Poseidon's thing that is linked to is it Celtic or Celtic? I've heard it pronounced both ways, gods. So like that just looks like such a cool place to see. It's in between the coasts of Ireland and Scotland. And see that I'd love to go to Greece and actually see the original temples. One of the places that we went in Europe was Rome. And so I got to see the Roman Colosseum and I set one of my books there and I had already written it. So I spent the whole time in the Colosseum just being like, yes, this is amazing. This is where I set my book. Take pictures. Like that's where they are. They're doing it. The labyrinth down there. Yeah. I have so much fun seeing those things in person. I also tend to love seeing unusual places in this world because I think so. A lot of us are so like, this is how the world looks. And because we're, in our little corner of it. And it's like, no, the world has so many amazing parts to it. Like in Dionysus's Labor, that cave is based on a real cave that's in Vietnam. Which I just think is incredible. Or I've got another book where they've got these salt flats and they go into these salt towers that look like rainbows. And that's actually based on a real place on Earth where these salt flats look like rainbows. Like just, I like finding unusual places here to base my mythologies on because, what a great, and then I get to go visit them.
I love it. I'm a fiend for traveling. I love hearing everybody's experience. So that's why I was like,
I love to travel so much. I love the different cultures. I love the different foods. I love to go to the museums and see the art. I love to find out about the etiquette and meet people from there and see all the, things that they're the most proud of. And that's just so much fun to me. There's places I want to go back to and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have time to go revisit these places if I go to all the other places I still want to see. So many places.
So many places, not enough time, never enough money.
Exactly.
It gets all of the things.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of travel, I was doing just a little peek, and I saw that you have a German tour coming up. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. So excited about that.
So I lived in Germany for 5 years, and I saw that you're going to be at the bookstore in Munich in the Marienplatz, and I am just so excited. So I lived in a little village, like about 2 hours south of Munich. And that was the airport, that was the big city that we would go to. Yeah. Jess has been there several times with me. So we are just very excited for that. And I'm sure, European listeners will absolutely love that as well. Munich is just a wonderful city, and I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Munich was actually one of our stops on our European trip. So, and my publisher actually happens to be housed out of Munich. So I got to meet with them a little bit while I was there in July, which was really cool. And I loved Munich. What a pretty city. And, we had a lot of fun there because we were there right in the middle of Euro 24. So all of the fans, the Norwegian fans, I got to say, happiest fans, they walk around singing, it's really fun. So I love that city, and I'm really excited to go back to it and to see more parts of Germany, because we're also going to hit Hamburg and Berlin. So just hugely excited for that tour and that opportunity. And the publisher there has been so kind and really neat. So for instance, at one of the events, I think at the one that is actually just a private event, they're going to have a Hades there.
That's so cool.
They were just oh, by the way, this is going to be part of your what? Yeah, we were just, what? Was that your expression too when they told you? You were what? Go again?
Yeah, I about fell out of my chair. I was oh, I'm down for that. And my husband was do you get to pick him? And I was I don't care.
Yeah, it's going to be there. It doesn't matter.
I'm sure it's going to be great.
Your husband's can I be Hades? Please. I think I should be Hades.
I'm so excited. And then they also have the person that's doing the audiobook, who's actually the narrator for the audiobook. So they will be with me at several of the stops to do she'll read the excerpt in her narrator voice. And that'll be really cool.
That's so cool.
I'm super excited. Plus, I'll get out of the heat and just be in Germany where it's so beautiful. So, and I've been practicing my German. I love learning new languages. I'm not fluent on anything, but anytime I go visit a new place, I try to learn some basics just to be able to communicate. So I've been working on my German. Thank you, Pimsleur app.
There you go. I just know sprechen Sie English, which is just do you speak English? Please help me. Please. I am just poor American who only knows English.
Yeah. Oh no, I wouldn't be able to have large conversations. But I would at least be able to ask for directions, thank you, order food, we'll be good.
That's so exciting. And then and that's not the only tour that you have going on. I feel you have so much going on. You're at all, again, between writing your second book, you have another book coming out in September, in addition to this one, and you're doing book conventions and festivals and signings. And where can we find you?
Oh gosh, so many places. So if you go on my website, go under events. So that will have all of them with the dates and the, if they're ticketed and all that good stuff. So I've got the German tour with the cities that I mentioned, and then, and that's at the end of September, and kind of bookending that, I guess you could say, I'm doing, essentially a US tour where I'm hitting, pretty much all the major cities in Texas. So Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin. I would love to get up and, because I'm from Texas, so I would love to get up to Lubbock. I'd love to go out to El Paso and hit some of the other major cities. But we'll have to figure that out maybe on the next book tour. And then I'm also hitting Orlando, and I'm hitting South Carolina and Colorado, and we're just about to add LA to the mix. And so there's still some coming in. And what's been just really fun, really, really fun. So up until this point, I consider myself basically a mid-list author. My career has steadily grown, but I'm not a major name out there. So if bookstores carry my books, it's because they actually signed up to carry my books. But I'm used to going to bookstores and being I could do an event. If you just order 2 of my books, I'm happy to sign them. I'm asking the bookstores for the favors, and now they're starting to reach out, which has just been so cool. So, and I'm I'm happy to go anywhere where you think people would actually want to come out and see me. Because connecting with the readers is one of my very favorite things to do. Just that anybody wants to, A, read something that came out of my head in the first place, and B, be excited about it and want to talk to me and actually see me. That's just the coolest the coolest thing. And so I'm really excited about this book tour with this book, because it's my first like official book tour. Like I've always done conventions and things like that, but never like a tour around a specific. So like it'll be so fun.
Well, we're so excited for you. And I think, I mean, we'll make sure that we'll have all this information in our show notes and where to find you and your socials and the tours. And we'll post those on our socials as well. And hopefully we'll be able to join you at like one of your stops. I'm, out of New York. So, I might not make to one of the other tours just yet, but it's all depending. Yep.
Oh, I would love to get up to New York. It's on my bucket list to get to all 50 states. I've made it to, I think I've got 15 left.
That's a lot. You did some damage. There's a lot of states out there. I don't know if I'm like, I don't know if it's on there.
Oh yeah, it's a bucket list. And actually I bumped into a gentleman on a cruise ship who's from Scotland who has been to all 50 states and all 50 capitals.
Whoa.
And I was like, that is, sir, way, way more than pretty much every American.
I was going to say, I don't think we even try that here.
I was like, I've been trying and I still haven't gotten to all the 50 states.
Shout out Des Moines. I think that's the capital of Iowa.
Yeah, exactly. But my mom's family is all from from New England area. And so it's just beautiful, beautiful up there. So I would love to come up and visit.
Please.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your new release, The Game Gods Play. We love this so much. And thank you. Just thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for speaking with us. And thank you for creating a fantastic story that really grabbed, I'm speaking for myself, that really grabbed my attention and kept me hooked the entire time. And the twists were twisty and everything I was entertained deeply the entire time. So thank you for all of that.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you love the book, and it's been great being on here with you guys. Please have me back sometime.
No, please. Even for your other books, let us know. I mean, this is this is for you too. This is your episode. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Seriously, this has been great.
This has been great. We'll talk to you soon. And as Abigail mentioned, please make sure you're following her on all her socials. We'll make sure those are in our show notes. And please feel free to follow us at ACOFAE Podcast on Instagram. We're also both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.